introductions first. My name is Peter Smyth. I'm co-founder and CEO of White Label Storage. Some of you may know this. We were just referring to Boston. Myself and my co-founder started a business called Local Locker when we were at Harvard Business School. The idea was to convert unused space in cities into small, walkable storage facilities. Self-storage is traditionally a remote, centralized product. It's a warehouse in an industrial zone, at least in cities. Our idea was, let's take unused space, it's dead retail, underparked parking garages, convert it to a walkable storage product, closet-sized storage units. All of you operators out there would be disgusted to know that our average in-place rent for a 4x4 unit is $160, $170 a month. It's a different business. Along the way, we developed this core competency of running storage facilities. And so we looked around at the market and we decided there's not a great national service provider for third-party management, especially for the non-institutional assets out there. We started out focused on the true rural 100 to 150 unit drive-up self-storage facilities. We thought if we can run remote stores in New York City, a lot of that lends itself to running stores remotely elsewhere. And since launching that product, which we call White Label Storage, of course, you can keep your own name and your brand. We've grown to close to 250 stores now around the country with a couple in Canada.
That's phenomenal growth, Peter. I mean, I don't think I quite realized that you guys really only kicked off, less than 2 years ago in earnest. Is that right?
We're the White Label. We wrapped our arms around this thing for a little bit in 2022, started managing stores, and then we really kind of dove into the market in 2023, 2024. So look, there's been incredible pull, and we're going to talk about that with your product. I mean, it's still a very fragmented market. There's the first piece of technology that everyone wanted to address was this FMS product. There are a bunch of providers there, but nobody really pieces everything together. And we'll talk about that with you. Yeah. It's probably already become clear that this is going to take the format of a fireside chat. This will be conversational. Mostly, let me allow you to introduce yourself, Luke. Luke is the CEO of AI Lean. Luke, could you tell us a bit about the company, a bit about your background?
Yeah, thanks, Pete. I'd love to. So AI Lean, for folks who are not aware, we've been around several years in the industry, and the organization was founded to solve the collections and delinquency challenge that operators face. So, I'm actually pretty new to the industry. Bringing a bit of a fresh lens. My background is it's been in software and SaaS, so I've sort of been involved with a number of software businesses, and my professional background has been in various scales of organizations, standing up and running various technology stacks. So when I was asked to get involved in AI Lean in an operational capacity at the start of 24, it was something that I really jumped at, Peter, because as someone looking into the industry, and you mentioned a little bit about like the various tech stacks that support the industry. You specifically brought up sort of that middle management layer, the FMS stacks. There's been quite a lot of really good software put out there to support operators as they scale and as the sort of the technology changes. I mean, everyone's hearing about AI these days. But this area around collections and delinquency, when I was looking at the industry, it just felt like this was a really fragmented space. There wasn't like a lot of real focus on this. There's a couple of players out there, and I'm sure folks on the webinar have heard of them. And of course, the FMSs offer little pieces of the puzzle, but there's nothing out there that really stitches this together end to end. So the mission for AI Lean is we talk about everything from collections through auction. So, whilst we don't actually compete directly with your storage treasures, etc., We do support the entire life cycle. So, customers and prospects often come to us and say, one of the main reasons we wanted to engage and explore your solution is that you do provide this holistic view that is all integrated, right? I see my portfolio status at a glance in terms of where my delinquency cycles are at and my collection status, instead of having to see pieces over here and pieces over there. So, the real opportunity here that we see is to bring all these sort of disparate pieces together and provide operators with a single place to go to solve for their collections and delinquency issues, similar to how the TMSs have done that for management, right? They pull together all these pieces and give operators one place to go. Yep.
Yeah, let me provide a little color there because I think it might be helpful. So you've got the FMS that we referred to, that's facility management software, right? The customer journey is a tenant goes to book a unit. They go from the front end, the website. They book their unit. If you're online as an operator, that's table stakes at this point in storage.
Right.
Once you sign up for your unit, you sign your lease. You get put into the back end, the system of record for your storage facility. That's where your rent roll, your tenants are there. You have your dashboard. In most FMSs, there are what one would call letter sets and delinquency settings, right? Where the FMS stops, at least prior to a product like AI Lean, is you would be responsible for doing your own research around what timelines you need to follow with respect to reaching out to tenants to inform them of being late, about layering on fees. There are laws around that. Just talk a little bit about where the FMS stops, where AI Lean comes in. I think just describing the sort of tech stack, because then the piece at the end that did exist before AI Lean was then this auction platform, which is a tight platform. So you are sort of the bridge between the two. If you could help describe that, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, for sure. Great point. Yeah. So, I think what you see in that FMS, the management platform, is you absolutely have the ability to structure, cycles, right? So you can send communications out to tenants at a delinquency day X, right? And you can have these structured. Not dynamic though, and they don't tie into, as I'm sure the operators on the call are aware, every state has its own specific regulations around when these are allowed, when these letters expire. How does that tie into your early collections efforts? How about the, as you think about the advertisements that are required in the majority of states, right? Paper versus digital. So whilst the FMSs, for the most part, have this ability to have a very fixed structure around when these communications get issued, they're not dynamic, and they don't tie into what your auction cycle looks like. So the real gap here, as you pointed out, between the existing auction sites, which help folks that are, as you said, it's almost table stakes to be digital right now. So for all folks out there that are running digital auctions, that piece of the puzzle that stitches together what is compliant with respect to when these letters go out and these tenant communications, and then when and how you need to structure your auction cycle to actually vacate the units. None of that is really exists out there. So the AI Lean product comes in, as you said, and is like the glue that stitches that together and provides you the visibility and provides you out-of-the-box compliance. So instead of having to spend a lot of time for every state you operate in, having to think through, all right, well, here's the kind of auction schedule that I want to run because this ties into my fee schedules. It ties into how I'm managing my bad debt. But it's also compliant. We sort of provide that out of the box. So it's a compliant solution out of the box that is the glue that stitches together the features that are provided in the FMS all the way through to vacating that unit post-auction.
Got it. So I gave you your opportunity to pitch AI Lean, and now I need to move away from it. Talk to us about Talk about the cost. So your product and just the delinquency management process in general is solving a problem. Can you talk about maybe some misconceptions about, everything associated with delinquency management? It's not just the legal auction process. Can you just talk about the economics of delinquency?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Peter, and something that we get asked about a lot is well, it's we're good, right? We handle this. It's just we have someone that manages this and sets up, ensures that we're compliant, and then sets up the ads, sets up the auctions, all that. And I think that as you're asking about what the biggest misconception is, I think it really is that perspective that folks think they just have it handled and it's okay, right? One of the things that we really coach folks to dig into is not just around the actual cost to place your ads or what you're paying to the auction houses, but you've got to think about really three buckets of opportunity here. One is lost revenue. The second is your efficiency, right? Your operational efficiency, and the third is your exposure, your legal exposure. So if I take those in turn and just sort of talk through a little bit about what each of those buckets represents. Lost revenue, I think the easiest way to think about this is every time you need to push a unit out, not only are you incurring increased bad debt, because typically you're not going to get back in the auction cycle, you're going to return cents on the dollar there, right? So you're pushing those fees that are being incurred and rent that's being billed to the tenant ledger. That's getting pushed out and ending up in bad debt. But also you've got the lack of inventory. So if you're in a particularly tight facility, higher occupancy, or maybe this is a unit that is ground floor, close to or second floor, close to the elevator, right? You've only got a few of those. There's an opportunity cost associated with having that held up for another month or another 2 months.
It's a static set of inventory that's tied up.
Correct.
It's offline. Yeah. It's non-revenue generating. If your square footage is revenue generating, you've eliminated some square footage as a non-profit generating use.
Yeah, and it's perishable, right, in a way, right? Because you've only got that month, and if that's tied up in an account that you're not going to be able to actually bill for, you can't go back and resell that month. So there's actually there is true real lost revenue that occurs when you don't have this process automated and consistently applied month to month. Operational efficiency, just to move on to that second bucket, I think the easiest way to think about this is the hours that are spent. The industry as a whole is grappling with labor costs, and it can be hard to find folks and demand facilities, and what's happening with hub and spoke and remote. So these are all just different perspectives on a point that is well understood in the industry, which is labor, one of the biggest expenses that ends up on your pro formas. So when you think about operational inefficiency, if you're not automating some of this process, that's a lot of dollars that you're spending on labor that. And we'll talk about this a little bit in the legal exposure piece, but that's a lot of time you're spending managing a process that really should be automated. And when we see folks automate this, all of this manual cycle, I mean, they can free up 30-40% of their DMs times, right? So if you think about, especially for you guys, as you're scaling dramatically, this allows you to sort of keep your ratio of facilities to DMs much lower, which gives you competitive advantage, right? So that efficiency piece is critical. And then the third bucket that folks maybe you're aware of, but perhaps don't really internalize the full extent of the risk and exposure. You had one mess up, and the DOJ comes after you. I mean, that's 75 grand a pop, right? So if that's 3 tenants or 4 tenants, it starts adding up pretty quick. And people are human, right? Everyone makes mistakes. When you're managing this glue based off spreadsheets and someone who knows this really well, and they're trying to cross all the T's and dot all the I's. I mean, it's never going to do as good a job as if you have an automated system that is consistent and repeatably applying your business's preference around some of this risk appetite and what is the absolute compliant limit around some of these timings. So
yeah, you covered the sort of a 3-pronged problem, right? You got lost revenue, operational efficiency, which is more of an opportunity, but is a cost if you're not taking advantage of it, and then the legal exposure. On the lost revenue piece, and thinking about that downtime, you can get beyond the delinquency process and get out in front of it, and maybe even avoid it altogether at certain facilities, depending on the customer base, by simply getting people out of those units who aren't paying. Right? It's like how early we have started looking at our tenants, and we used to go, what is the most efficient way to take a workflow associated with reminding people that they didn't pay and getting them to pay, to now we're focused on how can we identify who is not going to pay before the first of the month or before the anniversary billing date and track down their payment. So starting with the reactive approach, we were looking at our own workflows and saying, okay, again, looking at the FMS, once the anniversary billing date rolls around and you're delinquent, someone or something needs to go to that tenant and say, we need your rent, you're late, right? And someone needs to apply a late fee. The late fees will be added consistently in most FMSs out there, but there's a lot of variability among how you can track down payment. We didn't really like anything that was out there on the market that would, as far as reaching out to the tenant. Most FMSs will say, standard email, tenant, you're late, please log into your account and make a payment. We just said, there's an e-commerce way to do this. We built our own workflow on top of the FMS that is a sort of a one-click checkout. And then still, first of the month rolls around, which is how we have most of our facilities billing, and you get all those calls of people who call to make their payment. We started looking at our costs and saying, well, inconsistent phone calls create additional costs because then you have to overstaff your call center or your facility if you're a staff facility and the person on site's answering the phone. How can we eliminate those phone calls? And that's when we started saying, earlier in the month, let's see who's not on auto pay, and let's do everything we can to get those people on auto pay so that we have fewer people who need that notification and fewer people who are going to call. So it's not even the delinquency management process. This is sort of tenant behavior. How do you tease this out to minimize your costs down the road? That can even be a manual thing.
I think it's a great point, Peter. And I think what you're talking about, you guys are perhaps a little bit ahead of the curve. I think that ultimately that sort of train of thought around how do you preempt this? It's sort of a paradigm shift. Instead of thinking about, well, this is an auction delinquency cycle, I think that the real shift and where the industry is going to head is exactly what you're talking about. How do I think about this in terms of, really it's just a collections problem, and your auction delinquency cycle is one option you have, right? So I think what you guys have done with your one-click payment, bringing some of that e-com experience. I have a little bit of background in e-commerce, so I think you're bringing some of those tenets that are well understood across to storage, where I imagine you're having great results.
I'm looking at the list of people that are in this call here. It's not, you don't need a tool, and you don't even need software to do this. Like, I would imagine that some of the operators on this call have staffed stores. one of the reasons we started White Label was to kind of help streamline the staffing model at the facility. Like most stores that don't have many units have somebody sitting on site who's underutilized, right? There are just inevitably moments throughout the day that they are sitting there waiting for a call. That is a great opportunity to start combing through the rent roll and seeing who's on auto pay and proactively getting out in front of that and incentivizing them to get. So it's just a trick there that I think people can use is like, this is one of the KPIs you should be tracking is percentage of auto pays because it can mitigate this whole thing.
That's a great point, Peter. I mean, and one of the things we tell customers as well is as you free up hours, there's activities like this, like chasing occupancy, that time is much better spent on, right? Instead of having to manage some of this back end, almost administrative cycle. Yeah.
Yep. So what is the typical? Let's assume you do miss that opportunity, right? What's the typical timeline for a true delinquency process? I mean, I know every state is different, but taking into account using some automation and notification, what do you tend to see across the board?
Yeah, it's. I mean, typically you're looking at roughly 2 months is how it works, and as you said, this varies state to state, but I'm sure a lot of folks on the call right now are pretty familiar with this. There's you run your collection cycle up front, and Peter, you've talked about some innovative ways that you've reframed that part of the process, but it gets to a point where maybe you're not getting any joy with your collections, and you have to get to that first notice. And typically that would be a snail mail letter. Our wonderful advocacy folks in at SSA and ISS and the various state-based CSSA, et cetera. I mean, they're doing a great job of advocating for a shift to digital, obviously, because there's costs associated with sending out hard copy mail, but you're going to get to that first notification, which is going to have an expiry that varies by state. And I think we'll get back to that, but just that state by state challenge is tremendously difficult, especially as you're expanding as an operator across state lines. But then there's typically a second notice, which has another expiry date, and you're going to run through a variety of different structures around advertising. Does it need to be in a publication? Can it be digital? Can it be online? And then from there, again, a vast variety of different expirations before you can launch an auction and vacate the unit for relet.
So in that process, assuming that you use something like AI Lean, or even if you don't, have you quantified the number of hours roughly that go into this full cycle process? And do you have any data on, the number of units that do make it, number of units that enter a late stage to the number that actually make it through to a final auction?
Yeah. I mean, great question. So, we hear typically from customers that they're saving about 20 hours per facility per month. And that's a mix. I mean, obviously every operator is different in terms of where responsibility for different parts of the process lie. For example, some operators use facility managers for certain tasks, and some aggregate that to a central team or to a DM. But generally, we're hearing sort of roughly 20 hours per facility per month, and so that can add up really quickly, and that's pretty material time savings. Your second question, Peter, was, just remind me again. That was around
percentage. I mean, it could be hard to track because it depends on self-selection, who's on your platform. That's the data you have. Yeah. But percentage of folks that go from a first delinquency stage all the way through to auction.
Right. So I think one of the ways to think about this is maybe you could look at, if you're doing well as an operator, not on AI lean. I mean, if you're anywhere north of 2%, you need to be thinking about how you're managing this process. But we see folks come on at 30-day delinquency, anything sort of anywhere between like 5-6% up to north of 10% in some cases, right? Particularly challenging facilities, and generally by the time you get down to auction, you're seeing several points less than that. I think another way to think about this is what we typically are able to do is one additional unit per facility per month gets pushed to auction, right? When customers come onto the platform.
Yeah.
Now, part of that is the automation, right? So, you're consistently applying the process. You're not relying on anyone to press buttons or tie back into a schedule. Things are happening automatically. So your units are following the process. They're not missing dates. They're hitting all the required statutory dates. And so they're pushing to auction, staying on track. And generally, you're getting one additional unit through every month is how to think about it.
So, you can think about the savings or the cost of AI lean or any effort that you put into this process as sort of like an insurance against the legal exposure that you've got. Can you quantify that for us? Like, what is a typical busted lean process going to cost?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned one particular egregious case, right? I mean, I can share that we're aware that the DOJ is becoming particularly litigious. There's a few actions that are going on right now that are not necessarily even small vendors, but small operators. But those per unit can cost you on a fine basis $75,000. That's just for the fine without the civil action that may result subsequent. It adds up real quick. With regard to maybe a non-service member type action, we always advise customers to include limits of value in your lease documents, and I'm sure folks are well aware of that. But we're so confident in how we support the process and facilitating compliance that we indemnify our customers for any actions that are taken. So that's sort of one of the benefits we bring to the table and evidence of how sure we are of a product in our service.
So there's this AI piece, at least in the name, and then there's actually staying on top of kind of what is compliant and what is legal. How do you guys do that across every municipality that you serve? And what is your job? Are you outside of the US as well?
Yeah, we actually do support. We have customers with facilities up in Canada. We haven't shifted across the pond to Europe or down to Australia yet, although I'm sure you can hear a little bit from my accent. Australia, I'm sure, is high on the list for us to expand to at some point. But yeah, it is complicated, and as it stands right now, we have folks that stay on top of the state by state, and as we're thinking about how we implement our default compliance workflows, we integrate any updates that are happening into those default workflows, and that's how we ensure compliance. I think you've always got the edge cases though too, Peter. So one of the things that we we do is we maintain a very close relationship with Scott Zucker, whom I'm sure many folks in the industry are aware of. He's sort of one of the principal legal minds that been in the industry for a long time. And it continues to surprise me the kinds of random questions we get that are, hey, we found XYZ in the unit. What do we do about it? Or anything from this particular edge case happened. How do we handle it? So we also provide this sort of personalized support. And where we're not confident in our response, we get a sort of a legal ruling that we can stand behind.
Got it. So if you've got an operator that is taking over a facility for the first time, right? They're closing on it, or maybe a manager is taking over operations. What would you advise them to do with the tenants that are in process, right? Because you're inheriting some sort of exposure. How would you go about approaching, sort of gaining confidence in doing the process, or maybe that's not the call at all?
There's a couple of, every operator sort of has to do their own diligence here. I mean, our recommendation typically is when you're doing the analysis on and building up the pro forma, you really need to be thinking about just hitting reset on that. And I think relying on maybe the seller's diligence there and trying to cross-check that and cross all your T's there, perhaps just isn't worth the risk versus just restarting all those. And what we do with customers is we'll help them, depending on the state regulations. We'll take a look at the facility and say, all right, we can shorten, if there's maybe 10 units that are out there or 15, here's the shortest time we feel we can legally compress, and we'll run off-cycle auctions to help clear those out as fast as possible. I think the other thing that we sort of guide folks to do is some of these facilities you pick up and they're great. They've been running digital leases. They've been managing everything. Maybe they're up on an FMS somewhere that's, kept all the records quite structured. But oftentimes you buy this facility and you've got a drawer full of paper. And I think the other tactic here is to send out your 30-day notice. And I believe you guys proponents of this as well, but essentially notifying all the tenants that here's your new lease terms and you've got 30 days to respond, or the new lease terms go into effect. So I think that combination just helps keep you protected. And often the juice isn't worth the squeeze to go back and try and edit and audit and work out where everything is. It's just safer to sort of hit restart on a lot of that. Yeah.
And by the way, I do want to let people know we have a Q&A here. There are a couple of these questions that I think I can assume the group would be interested in, and there's no better person to answer them than Luke, but feel free to drop questions in the chat. We can answer those live as well. All right, so circling back to that, if you're buying a new facility or assuming this sort of risk with tenants that are in the middle of a lien process, I would say your message is get all the documentation you can before you close. Like, that is a piece of your closing diligence checklist. And then
100%. Yeah.
Day one, or maybe even before you close, if you can get if you have a good enough relationship with the seller, send out the new lease, your new Scott Zucker lease on day one or before day one, because the sooner you can get those, the new terms to go into effect, the sooner you can kick off the new process. And I guess layering one more thing on there, like, this is about getting offline units back online, or non-revenue generating units back online. There is this concept of a release or a pay and vacate that you can send to tenants. I mean, at the end of the day, I think most of us are probably aware you're just not going to generate what is owed from the auction in most cases. And if that is the case, all you're really looking to do is, as quickly as possible, get that tenant out and get that unit back online so you can re-rent it. In that case, sending out a form that a tenant can sign to release their stuff, or even just getting them on the phone and saying, just come pick your stuff up and get out of here is probably the right play there.
I think we were talking a little bit about this earlier, and some of the stuff you guys are doing upstream around collections. I definitely think we'll see in the coming months and year, certainly, some new feature set that we're thinking about in terms of ultimately how do we help you guys be more efficient in collecting, and how do we, this isn't just a keep you legal, right? This is about what you guys are tracking is cents on the dollar that you're getting back on your, your delinquent, your bad debt, etc. How can we help you as an operator collect more, collect it earlier, right, and turn those assets quicker?
Got it. So that's kind of your roadmap. You started out with the legal piece of this, and you're looking around the market and you still see the opportunity to go beyond that and maybe go upstream.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, where, as I mentioned, I think when we got on the call earlier, we're not interested in competing with the FMSs, right? We partner with all of the FMSs, and we're integrated with all of the major ones. And whenever a customer approaches us and says, "Hey, we're moving to this FMS," if we're not integrated, we will integrate with that FMS. We'll support our customers wherever they want to go. So this isn't about us suddenly launching AI FMS, right? But there still is this gap in the market where I don't believe. I just think there's a lot of opportunity, and the push for you guys to be more efficient and to improve your operation, especially as third-party management. I mean, there's a lot of competition out there. We believe that we can help customers like yourself and others to drive that efficiency up and essentially think about this problem holistically. Right? Get more dollars back in your bank accounts. Yeah.
I had a question here. It's about integration. It's really what would be helpful to know is what do you integrate with? What FMSs does AI integrate with? What else plugs into it? What does the whole stack look like?
Yeah. So we currently support 5 FMSs, as in we're integrated with 5 FMSs. We currently, the FMSs we are integrated with are SiteLink, Storage, Cubby, Tenant, and SSM. And we have certainly had conversations with several of the others, and we're talking to a couple of there are customers that are moving across to some facility management softwares that we're not integrated with. So we're working with those FMSs to integrate. It isn't a huge lift for us to support a customer or someone who's looking to join if they are on a facility management software that we don't support. So we sort of like to say that we'll support customers wherever they want to go. So if that means they're on an FMS that we don't currently integrate with, we'll commit to integrating to that FMS.
Got it. And then how much, assuming that a customer has a certain type of communication style or cadence that they want to use, how customizable? Obviously, I'd imagine you're not going to let anybody do something that does not adhere to the compliant timelines. But beyond that, how much customization is there?
Yeah, I mean, when we look to relaunch the application, so last year, 2024, we went through a pretty substantial rebuild of the application, And one of the tenets that we focused on was this ability to support customers where they wanted to go. And part of that is every customer has a particular take on the way in which they engage with tenants and the tonality and the risk preferences they have. We, as you said, right, we have some bright lines that we don't allow customers to sort of push outside of, right, that are going to ensure that the process as a whole remains within the compliance statute for the state. But we did build in pretty extensive customization. So not only can you customize frequency, type, number of communications, but we also allow templatization. So a lot of these communications, we have good flexibility because maybe they're not statutory communications. When there's statutory communications, we obviously have some tighter requirements to ensure they stay compliant. But outside of that, branding and tonality of communication, how many frequency, type of, communication method, there's quite a lot of flexibility there that allows a customer's perspective on how they communicate with tenants to sort of reflect in the methods that we use on your behalf.
Got it. Okay. And then to give sort of edge cases here.
My favorite topic.
What's that?
My favorite topic, Peter.
Yeah.
These all the time. It's like, what about
favorite thing? Abandoned vehicles.
Right.
It's junk. You think it's junk, but you can get in some hot water if you treat it like junk.
Yeah, it's again different operators have different perspectives here, and what we typically advise is where applicable to leverage tow laws, because it can get a little hairy once you get into managing the sale. Often it's just easier because again, coming back to what are you trying to do here? You're not necessarily trying to recover. You may be getting 10 cents on the dollar back from your auctions, right? You're not trying to necessarily get that other 90 cents on that one unit. It's going to be much more valuable to you to just clear that unit and get it back into circulation. So, our typical guidance there is where possible, we advise towing. Yeah.
Got it. Makes sense.
Yeah.
How can we expect, what's on whether it's at AI Lean or elsewhere? I mean, you guys are focused on the automation associated with this delinquency process. It sounds like, reading the tea leaves, you might be focused on collections, kind of going upstream. Where else do you think there are similar use cases that people should be looking at within the workflows around self-storage that just take up a lot of time? I mean, this is certainly one of them, and it's one that you have to focus on because of the legal exposure, right?
Yeah, that's a great question.
And this will be our way to tell, are you... Yeah. What is on the 3-year vision and horizon?
Yeah, I wish I had a sort of a bundled answer for you, Peter, but maybe if I just step back and not necessarily think about this from AI Lean's perspective, but just as an outsider coming into the industry 18 months ago, I think that there's the facility management problem seems to have, there's a lot of good players out there that are in this space that have good solutions. But I have wondered a little bit recently about the just upstream of that. There's a lot of mechanisms that operators use to fill units, and I'm sure you're tracking this, but SEM and SEO, the relevance, like so search engine marketing, paid ads, and just how your websites are structured to rank highly in Google. I don't think that's going away tomorrow, but how is that going to change over the next 12, 18, 24 months as folks maybe veer away from Google as their entry point to whatever queries they have, right? And maybe shift to Perplexity or chat or, wherever chat is integrated.
Yeah.
Actually down in Florida, I think the ISS conference, I did a bit of a session on sort of AI and where some of that is trending. And one of the data points I pulled just for my own curiosity was I was looking at adoption rates, and I thought, hey, it'd be interesting to plot. Let's have a look at like some of the huge trends in technology that have happened in recent time. First one being internet adoption, the second being the adoption of cloud computing, which for everyone out there is the move from having like physical boxes to being able to rent computing via, say, AWS, right, via Amazon. They were the leaders here. And then the third trend I plotted was the adoption of AI, right, generative AI. It was absolutely astonishing. So if you looked at the adoption of the internet, right, to get to roughly 40% adoption, you're talking somewhere between 20 25 years, something like that. That seems to be a pretty quick uptick, right? Then you look at cloud computing, that same sort of penetration in the market you achieved in maybe around 10, little over 10 years. You plot the generative AI, and I only picked up generative AI simply because I had data for it. But so it's not necessarily an apples to apples, but I think it directionally it gives you some pretty interesting output. Less than 2 years to get that same adoption point. So I think the point is that the rate of change is so dramatically increased that how this is going to evolve is something that I'm definitely watching and something I assume folks out there in the audience and that will watch this on recording should be watching.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're thinking about it whether it's an opportunity. It's probably a bit of both, right?
Right.
If there is true AGI, I'm not sure that any of us are necessary to run a storage facility.
Right.
It's going to be open AI running storage, everything.
Yeah.
I mean, we look at it. I think one of the use cases where this agentic software is working best right now is customer service.
For sure.
And I think the horizontal layers are very good, and then it's a matter of how do you adopt them. Really, even somebody who knows their storage facility very well might not be able to answer questions well about it. So it's about how do you feed and organize the information around it. That's one of the things we're thinking through is what is our knowledge base? Every facility that we manage is different. How can we organize the information so that we can maybe leverage this, not for every type of call, but for some calls to just get people information faster and more consistently in the language that they speak.
100%. I mean, that's one of the obvious use cases. And I think some, when folks ask me about, in quotes, AI, right? I think, that's my first piece of guidance and advice is don't just try and slam it in randomly. Like take a use case that is immediate, apparent, and that it's readily applicable. And I think you hit on one that is absolutely, should certainly be one of the top use cases to be thinking about.
Yeah. We have another question here while we were chatting. How do you know if a contact has opened snail mail? What if an address is incorrect? How do you address that?
Yeah. So question about how do we know if an address is correct? So I think, and hopefully Scott doesn't slap me over the hand for getting this wrong, but I believe as long as we send to the address on the lease, and how we do that is when mail goes out that is compliant, we track. We digitally record to our ledger not only all of the metadata about the piece of mail, but we also record the digital POM. We have a special relationship with the USPS that allows us to create these POMs, and those proof of mailings that we archive digitally into that record are the way in which we ensure compliance. So this also veers into a little bit of the audit side. So probably folks that aren't leveraging our product, they're probably doing manual audits. So maybe the DM, is like, all right, we've got these 10 units that are going into this auction. I'm going to look through the leases. I'm going to make sure that the letter matches the address on the lease, that there hasn't been an address change in the FS, and if it has, that it's a legal address change. There's close to 50 data points that we audit, Peter, when we do audits. And so, on the address piece, we ensure that the letters that go out and are tracked in the sort of digital record are ensure compliance. Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you, you guys are a pain in our ass in that you won't let it go out. The audits will prevent it going out if it's not compliant. So,
yeah, it's and I think you'll see over the next talking a little bit roadmap as we we've got a couple of features coming out. I'm not sure if you guys are specifically on our pilot. Happy to chat to you about it, but that are going to smooth and streamline some of that audit process.
I'm sure there's your customer service use case there. It's probably, hey, why did this get jammed up? Like that same question is probably happening for you, consistently across like the same 6 questions. And that probably makes up 80% of your customer service ticketing, right?
Yeah, 100%. So, I think that's some quick wins there where we can help you guys automate more things and obviously just continue to give you guys time back, right?
Yeah. All right, I think we have a couple more minutes here. I had another question, and then we may wrap with just contact information. Is there, if someone's interested in using AI Lean, is there a minimum portfolio or facility size? Obviously, you talked through the FMSs that you do work with. It sounds like there might be some custom use cases beyond that as well. Is there a certain type of facility that lends itself to this, or talk through that?
Yeah, I think there's depending on the way in which the operator is thinking about the problem. There's applicability across the scale and across the distribution nature of operators. And so, what I mean there is you may have a single facility portfolio, but they're hyper concerned about, the risk aspect, and just having that indemnification and sort of insurance layer is worth it for them, right, at one facility. Now, that said, typically, what we typically see is folks, as they start adding facilities, trying to keep track of process across, in different regions in the same state, right? Because you've got different advertising concerns and challenges, but especially as you bring in cross state lines, you've got multiple jurisdictions. Or perhaps you're thinking about this from a remote first. And so you're thinking about facilities as being principally remote. Employing a service like ours where you can maybe not even give time back, but it enables certain facilities, pro formas to work because they are being set up as remote. So it does really depend on the operator, their sort of go-to-market strategy, how they're thinking about it. But there is applicability. Yeah.
If I'm looking at it through the framework of the three-pronged sort of savings and value adds, right? You've got your lost revenue, that's going to stay the same, but your operational efficiency and your legal risk on a single asset. If you talk to one lawyer one time, talk to Scott Zucker, get your delinquency timeline down, and then you have a stranded asset in that store manager who's there and has the time, they're probably not as much of a savings versus multiple facilities, multiple states, and coverage costs across a number of personnel. I think that's probably where it starts to make more sense. But if you're just looking at the legal exposure, I mean, it is an insurance policy, especially if you're going to indemnify your clients.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So where can we find you, Luke? What's the best way to, get a demo or experiment, pilot with the AI Lean product?
Yeah. I mean, folks should feel comfortable to reach out directly to me. I mean, my email is Luke, Luke, at ai-lean.com. So you can reach me directly there, or the website's got a bunch of case studies where you can see the sort of results that other operators in the industry have managed to deploy. If you just want to sort of get a demo from one of the folks in the team, you can reach out to sales at AI Lean, and someone will be happy to set up a time and just help you think about the problems that you're experiencing in your facilities. Perfect. Thank you, Luke. And you can find us at whitelabelstorage.com. I am Peter at whitelabelstorage.com. I think this was helpful. It's not all about hopefully it's not all about white label, not all about AI Lean. We've hopefully helped people come in through looking at delinquency management through a different lens here. Thanks, Peter. Appreciate you hosting, and great chatting. All right. Thanks, Luke.